start. I call this meeting of the Patton Township Board of Supervisors, July 21st, 2021, meeting to order. First item of business is a Pledge of Allegiance. If you are able, please stand and we'll recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Second item on the agenda is public comments. If anyone wishes to address the Board of Supervisors on a topic that is not already included in the agenda, this is your opportunity to speak. I see Mr. Mullen. Let me see, Alex, any other people raise their hand on Zoom who might want to speak?
No.
No. Mr. Mullen, come up and please identify yourself and your township of residence.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Mullen. I've been a Patton Township homeowner for 22 years. I have several concerns to tell you about. The first question I have is 5 days ago, Supervisor Abrams emailed me 3 emails. They were all the same, and they were coded with a zip file. I tried to open it. I couldn't open it. So I think he was trying to email me a Word file. If he could just email me that file directly, he has my email.
It was a phishing scam. Somebody had hacked into our emails and was sending out. You shouldn't open those. Do not open those attachments.
I didn't open those. Okay, I'll delete them.
Yeah,
Okay,
you can delete those.
Okay, I did email Supervisor Abrams because he used to work at AccuWeather, and I think that relates to my other concern. I think the sewer utility, the UAJA, is overbilling some businesses, some people, including me. They overbilled me by $2,000 for 5 of the last 6 years, and I plan to sue them later this year, and I set up a website to describe how they overbill some people and some businesses, statecollegereport.com. And my email for Mr. Abrams was to tell him that if he has contacts at AccuWeather, please have them contact me. Anyone can contact me on my website. At the bottom, there's a contact form, because the AccuWeather is being charged or billed almost $5,000 per quarter, but I think their bill should be $250, and you can see how I calculated that on my website. So if AccuWeather or anyone wants to contact me, please go to that website. My next point is with the Patton Township Business Association, with their leader is David Pankow. I own a business in Patton Township. They won't let me apply for membership. They won't give me their bylaws. They won't let me attend their meetings. They won't let the public, like me, attend their meetings. That seems suspicious. I just learned of the PTBA a year ago, and a year ago he said they're not having meetings because of COVID. But then I just realized for the last 6 months they've been having meetings on Zoom. So I don't think he was working in good faith with me, and he actually called me today and told me never to show up at the Patton Township Business Association because my business doesn't qualify, and he won't even let me enter the room, just public comment, or just to watch what their organization is about. It's just very suspicious. If any of you are in the Patton Township Business Association, I'd like to attend one of your meetings or become a member. I can pay the fee or just attend as the public. It seems, why do you keep that secret? I don't know. I wish I could ask your lawyer, your solicitor, what she thinks of my website, statecollegereport.com. I think the UAJA discriminates in billing. They charge every single property, residential and business, different wastewater rates per gallon. I think that's discrimination, and that's all I have to say. I can take any questions about my website. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Any other public comments? Elliot, do you have a response?
Well, I don't actually even use that email address, so if someone at the township can deactivate it, because I don't even know how to get into it. I use my Gmail account, as you know.
Okay, it's been noted. Any other public comments? If not, we'll proceed next to item 3 on the agenda, presentations and public hearings. 3A is a proposed subdivision and land development ordinance to require street lights at intersections. And Doug, you want to introduce this?
Yeah, as noted in the agenda, there was discussion when the Barger Fields subdivision plan went through, I'm going to say about 6 months ago, about whether they should be a street light at their intersection with Route 550. Ultimately, they agreed to put one in, but it was noted that we do not require those under our subdivision land development code. So the planning, at the request of the board, the planning commission took up the measure. They looked at the issue, and they came back with a recommendation to add the language as shown on screen to the section 153-22 that would require street lights at all new intersections that were created as part of new subdivision or land development plans. So with that, I recommend that the board open a public hearing, take comments, and then following the comments, close the hearing and consider action to approve ordinance 2021-621.
Okay, I will now open a public hearing on this proposed addition to section 153-22 to require a street light in new developments that have an intersection at a public roadway. Comments? Elliot, you have your hand raised. Do you have comment on this?
Yes, I agree with it, and I'm ready to make the motion when the hearing is closed.
Okay, I'll call on you when the hearing is closed. Do we have any comments? Alex, do you see any?
No.
Any other, how about the board? Well, we'll talk about that after the public hearing is closed. Seeing that there are no further comments, I will now close the public hearing, and we will now consider action about approving this ordinance number 2021-621. Okay, Board of Supervisors, any questions or comments? Elliot, go ahead.
I move the motion to increase the illumination.
So we move to adopt ordinance 2021-621, correct?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, Anita.
Anita, second the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none from the board members, let's call a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Everyone voted aye, so the motion carries unanimously. Okay, thank you. We'll move on now to item 4 on the agenda, public safety, the June 2021 Public Safety Report. Sergeant Shupenko will give the report. Sergeant, you're on.
All right.
You're on. Go ahead.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be back from my annual July meeting. The chief is out of town this week. You should have a packet with the police report in it for June 2021. And you'll see some statistics at the very top. Most of the numbers are about in line with what they normally are. You'll notice the 2020 numbers are down a little bit, and that's probably due to the COVID shutdowns from last year. But officers this year in June conducted 116 traffic stops, wrote 23 citations, issued 2 parking tickets, and made 20 criminal arrests. Bike patrol was pretty active. Officers got out a number of times there and handled several incidents doing bike patrol. As far as department notes go, One of the major ones in June was that a 22-year-old male was charged with criminal mischief and disorderly conduct after discharging a firearm in public. The bullet from that discharge actually entered an occupied residence and caused about $2,000 worth of damage, but fortunately no one was hurt in the incident. Another male was taken into custody on a felony warrant, and when officers searched him, incident to his arrest, they found he was in possession of methamphetamine, and he was charged accordingly with that. There was another drug arrest involving an 18-year-old male and a juvenile male. There was an arrest for driving under the influence, 3 for public drunkenness and 3 for retail theft, and officers served 3 warrants of the 9 they attempted. There was a minor use of force incident in June. Officers who were attempting to take an intoxicated male into custody in order to transport him to the hospital. The male was rather reluctant to go, and officers trying to escort him out of the house, he actually fell over. They helped him back up and then got him into the ambulance. There was no other issues after that. No one was injured in that incident. Community relations activities. Officer Tuskovich is a school resource officer at Park Forest Middle School, and he rounded out the school year with a couple presentations on stranger danger and 911 usage. 3 of our officers, Officer Sunderland, Officer Vardzell, and Officer Basala, are all certified to inspect and install child safety seats in vehicles, and they hosted an event on June 18th and checked a number of people's vehicles to make sure that the seats were installed properly, or they helped the folks install their seats, and they checked 15 seats during that event. Officer Sunderland participated in an open house event at the Fullington Bus Garage. I think it was sort of a job fair community relations activity. And then officers were very active checking the parks in the township, especially Green Hollow Park. I know I, for one, have gone through Green Hollow Park so many times, I've named the squirrels. As far as training goes, Detective Snyder, Officer Schaefer, and Officer Tuskovich attended tactical response team training twice. One of our newer officers, Officer Snyder, attended emergency vehicle operations course instructor training. So he joined Sergeant Albright as one of our instructors for our emergency vehicle operators course. And you'll see our 2 newest hires actually attended a 3-day EVOC training in June. All of our new officers, as soon as they're hired, they attend an intensive 3-day vehicle training course. And then every officer, every 2 years, we attend a 1-day certification for vehicle driving. So officers put about, probably average about 40 or 50 miles a night on patrol driving, and while we have a good safety record as far as driving goes, extra training certainly doesn't hurt. And Sergeant Albright, Officer Schaefer, and Officer McCaslin participated in the Special Olympics torch run on June 9th. And Officer Staley, again, one of our newer officers, he attended crisis intervention team training, which is the mental health training. That's a week's worth of training. He attended that in June. All of our new hires eventually attend that training when it's available. And Chief Jolly is busy as usual. He was a guest speaker at the CIT training, and he attended a number of other trainings. You also see in your packet a few notes of appreciation from the public. I think I say this every year. I always think police officers are somewhat like baseball umpires. They're completely unnoticed since they make a bad call. So it's always nice to get a note from the public expressing their appreciation. It's not expected, but it's always appreciated. The longer note in there, it talks about enforcing the weed ordinance, and the person who sent that in gave some descriptions on why that's important, and I think a lot of credit is due to our ordinance enforcement officer, Mr. Dugal, who stays on top of those issues and makes sure they're taken care of. That about rounds out the report. There's a couple photos in there, like I mentioned before, of the safety seat inspection, and then you'll see the list of calls that we handled in June. It was down a little bit from May. We had 441 in May. June, we showed 355, with the leading incidents being EMS assists and traffic incidents. And there's the usual sort of mix of different incidents in there. If anyone has any questions on anything specific, I'd be happy to research that or answer it right now.
Thank you, Sergeant. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much, Sergeant Shupenko.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, take care.
Okay, next item on the agenda is going to be number 6, Planning and Zoning. 6A, Planning Commission Report from Sharon Collins. Sharon, unmute yourself, and you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Our meeting was short and sweet last week. We talked about the View Apartments. They had wanted some amendments made just to reduce their parking requirements, and we discussed that, and we decided to they resolved all the issues that we had questions about, with the exception of we just wanted to have everything checked by Alpha Fire Company, have them just double check the plan and make sure it meets all the requirements. And so we decided to approve it conditionally as long as Alpha Fire Company approves that. And then we looked at Benner Township has some common boundaries with us, and they are updating their zoning ordinances. And so we just talked about a few of the issues there and didn't think that we had anything, that we were going to require or request in particular on that. And everything else, that was pretty much everything in the regular meeting. And then on the work session, we had a presentation given to us from Trish Meek that about bicycle parking and to incentivize and require it. And she gave a great presentation, and we decided to go ahead and have her draft an ordinance for review. And that pretty much covers everything we covered in Planning Commission. So, any questions?
Any questions for Sharon? Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to 6B, Proposed Benner Township Zoning Ordinance. I think Nicole Pollack has this one. Nicole?
Yep. So Benner Township is looking to update their zoning ordinance. So as a neighboring municipality, we are given the opportunity to review and provide comment. So I did review the changes, particularly the zoning districts that we share the border with, and I have drafted a letter with some draft comments that, as Sharon mentioned, we discussed at the Planning Commission meeting last week. The Planning Commission seemed happy with the comments that were drafted. They did not provide any additional comments. And Alex has the letter pulled up there. Can answer any questions if there are any, or if there's anything additional the board would like to make advisory comments to Benner Township regarding their zoning.
Okay, I see we have in the attachments numbered 6B.2 is a proposed response letter from the township to Benner Township with a number of comments. Does the board have any questions about the letter or anything else? Or even the public, if any of the attendees on Zoom here wish to address this, make any comments? Alex, do you see anybody? I can't see the whole.
No.
All right, I think then what we need to do is, do we need a motion to?
No, you can just by consensus, we'll
So it
forward
sounds
on the
like the board
comments.
does not have any additions or changes to the proposed letter, so we direct the manager to go ahead and send the letter with our comments. Next item is 6C, minor amendment to the land development plan, the View Apartments on Toftree Avenue. Is this yours or Nicole's?
I'll let Nicole, but I just realized I did not send a email out to the consultant for this, so I don't believe they're with us, but if the board would like to take action on this, the staff can run you through it. I'll let Nicole do an introduction.
All right. So the View Apartments are located out on Toft Trees Avenue. They've been out there for a handful of years now, and the required parking that they constructed was 497 parking spaces. And they are looking for a reduction of 12 spaces. They have 2 pre-manufactured sheds placed out there. They did provide some historical parking data, so they have been keeping track of how much of their parking has been utilized since they have had occupancy. And I would like to point out that the sheds were placed without going through the proper permitting channels with the township. So the community manager would like to kind of make amends for that and come through and provide us with all this information. There is a letter, I believe, attached from her, kind of giving some more details and background to the placement of the sheds. And they are looking to bring them up to compliance and inspections. And so they are asking for a reduction in the required parking so that those sheds aren't impacting that as well. And as Doug mentioned, if there are questions, try to answer them.
The Planning Commission has recommended conditional approval with completion of the items noted on the comment letters. The second item, or second condition the board or the Planning Commission had was satisfactory plan review by the COG Fire Director. That was completed last week, and we included an email from Steve Baird noting that he didn't find any issues with the plan. Third condition was satisfactory review by the zoning officer of the maintenance buildings. Accessory ramps do not impede traffic flow. He's done that and found that there's no issues. And finally, Planning Commission asked that a note be added to the plan that states management remove parked maintenance equipment from the parking lot if spaces are required for residents or visitors. The ownership of the View has agreed to all those conditions, and staff would recommend that the board take action to approve conditionally approve this plan as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Okay, I will accept a motion to conditionally approve this plan with the conditions that have already, that are listed in the agenda that were outlined verbally by the manager. Elliot,
So moved.
is there a second?
Second, Pam Robb.
Seconded by Pam Robb. Now, questions or comments or discussion? Board members, public? Seeing none, then let's move to a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Everyone voted aye. The motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 7A, intergovernmental cooperation request to form a Center County Human Relations Commission. Doug?
I first brought this to the board's attention in May. We had received a request from the Ferguson Township, State College Borough, and Bellefonte Borough to consider joining with them and to form a joint Human Relations Commission. There was a letter included from the Ferguson Township manager. At that review, the board had several questions about details of how we go about forming such a thing and appointing members and what kind of financial impact we might experience. I forwarded those comments to Tom Fontaine, who's the State College Borough Manager, and Dave Perbolka, who's Ferguson Township Manager, and Ralph Stewart, the Bellefonte Borough Manager. I did get responses back from Mr. Fontaine and Perbolka. Those were included in the agenda materials, item 7A2. There was a color-coded conversation between me and them with responses to the questions we have asked. We had asked about appointing a member from Patton Township to the commission. There were some questions about qualifications and training. There was a question about enforcement process, again noted the primary tool that the local Human Relations Commission would use is mediation to try and resolve conflicts, and there are some there's some opportunity to provide fines, but that's usually not done. The borough, in terms of financial commitment, the borough says they have seen they've received 3 complaints since 2016. Primarily, costs are due to hiring a legal firm to do investigation and then advise the Human Relations Commission of how to proceed. They noticed that typical case might cost less than $1,000. In terms of when this would start, we're looking at beginning the county HRC probably at the beginning of January of 2022. Would permit us time over the next few months to take the steps required to review and pass non-discrimination ordinance, and then enter into a set of agreements with the other members and budget for the HRC in our 2022 budget. With that, I'll answer any questions the board may have, and I suggest you solicit public input and provide direction on moving forward.
Is the board satisfied with the responses we received that are listed in that agenda attachment? Elliot, go ahead.
Oh, yes. I was satisfied. I think we should go ahead with it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Pam Robb, go ahead.
I attended several of their meetings prior to this, and I'm in agreement with Elliot. We seem to be one of the only, I think it's one other township that's not a part of this organization. So I really believe that we need to step up and be a part of this moving forward.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board or from the public? Any public comment? Anita? Hold on one second. I'll get you next. Anita, go ahead. You had your hand raised.
I agree with Supervisors Robb and Abrams, and I would, if you need a motion, move or direction that we move ahead with the timetable that our township manager has outlined in the agenda to reach the point where we can approve this and get funding and appoint a representative.
I don't think we need the motion, it's just consensus, but we have another comment. Mr. Mullen? You have the
Hi,
floor.
Kevin Mullen, Patton Township. I have experience with the HRC Human Relations Committee of Pennsylvania. About a year ago, I told them about my sewer overbilling issue, that they discriminate, that they charge everyone different rates per gallon for wastewater, and they didn't care at all. The commission investigated it and said they're closing the case. They didn't care about that discrimination. Like all other utilities, water, gas, everything else, electricity, you pay for exactly how much you use. But the UAJA charged me twice as much as everyone else. Yeah. So I hope you start up this local HRC group, but I don't think it'll have any effect, but I want you to start it up.
Well,
so if you have any question about my interaction with them from a year ago, I have limited experience with them, and I don't know what this local group would do, if anything. It seems kind of vague to me.
yeah. Well, Mr. Mullen, you've already made your points before, so let's move on. Any other comments or questions? Sounds like you have a consensus from the board to proceed with your timetable that you have listed.
Yes, sir.
Next item is 7B. timeline for approving the Center Region COG Climate Action Plan and Adaptation Plan. Supervisor Whitman, you have the floor.
Great, thank you. Everybody can hear me, right? So as supervisors all know, the COG has been addressing the climate action and adaptation going forward. And the general forum, as I included in the notes on the agenda, has set certain benchmarks for the climate action and adaptation plan to, or certain benchmarks that COG will meet, and we have developed the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee, actually supporting Pam Adams, who is the one who's actually writing this. I'm not quite sure where to look. That's my problem. Let me just, okay, I've got that. And the reason I'm presenting it tonight is because this CAP, this Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, will essentially be, thanks, Doug, the lens, Alex, I'm used to looking at the Zoom screen. This will essentially be the lens through which municipalities will be viewing upcoming actions, all actions. I know we do have many lenses through which we view things, not the least of which is a financial one, but we are set to meet the benchmarks which many of us in this room are familiar with, and I just want to relay those for the public watching, and that is by the year 2030 to have a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions to 45% of the baseline levels that were developed in, a reduction by 45% of those identified at the 2010 levels, and then by 2050, the reduction would be 80%, and we would make up the additional 20% with carbon offsets. I want to draw the board's attention to the enclosed document, which is the outline of the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. And, oh.
Do you want me to take it off?
You are so good. No, this is great. So you have it up on the screen. The point I want to make here is that this is the first step in filling out this outline. The devil is in the details. We have for each of the 6 areas, and you don't need to change the screen here, we have broken it down into, got the 6 areas of energy efficiency and reduction, renewable energy, sustainable transportation, solid waste, land management, and clean and healthy water. Within each of those 6 categories, there are objectives and then talking or points that we will use, or items that we will attempt to do on those talking points. So what I would like to do is just call your attention to that by giving some examples and giving an overview of what we, the Climate Action Sustainability Committee, are asking of fellow supervisors, which is not to come up with all of the details in filling out this plan, but in helping us set priorities. So to start thinking about that, there are what I consider 3 levels of making these changes. The one that we will be most directly involved with are changes made at the municipal level, obviously. We will then be looking at the regional level, the COG, and then ultimately this plan asks or suggests advocacy at the state and federal level. We will not be, elected officials will not be doing that advocacy, that will be staff, but again, we're directing the work of our staff and direction for them to take. So some examples, and I'm trying to prime the pump here. So some examples at the municipal level, we're looking at cars that we purchase? Can we get more electric cars? We're looking at lawn equipment. Can we change from gas powered to electric? Looking at the building, I know we've done a lot with the lights already, and but there are many, there is much more detail when looking at the building and the energy use. At the COG level, we may be looking at codes for municipal buildings. We could be looking at waste collection, dropping that from once a week to once every 2 weeks. That would cut our energy expense considerably. And let's see. Yeah, I know that you can go through and read all these. If it's all right with board members and again with Mr. Erickson, I will be reaching out individually to people to sort of get some ideas after you've had a chance to look at this. And I don't mean to give more work to you, but it's something that we are really gearing up to, and we'll be starting this in over the next 3 months. I've provided an outline or a calendar of steps for completing that. We'll hear from Pam Adams in September. Let's see, I think with that, I will ask if there are any suggestions right now for any area of reduction in energy that board members may have a pet interest in or feel that it's the low-hanging fruit.
Elliot has his hand raised.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Yes, Elliot, go ahead.
I don't know if this is a concern or just a way of helping this, but I noticed you're mentioning things we can do to buildings. And it seems like the facilities committee would be one to work on something like this. And we should also, when I thought of that, I thought, well, are there any other issues involved with this that should also be made part of the work project for different committees so that we're really attacking the problems in a multifaceted way rather than just saying it's a climate problem and it's a different category than all the other problems we have. This is going to be all pervasive. And so the more people we have looking at it and then coordinating efforts, I think the more successful we'll be.
You've actually hit one of the bigger nails on the head. When we were forming the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee was who we would coordinate with, how often we would coordinate. The Facilities Committee is right up there, as is the new Transportation and Land Use Committee, but it's the LUDI Committee or whatever we're calling it. But yes, that's definitely on our list. And that's definitely a way to go. We actually think that the first topic that we'll dive into is energy sustainability, energy in buildings, and then renewable energy, sort of those going together. Then perhaps in the spring, move on to I forget all the different categories, but it's the land, sort of land management. A lot of that is agricultural, but looking specifically at homeowners and the reductions that can be done on a resident by resident basis. That is going to be done largely through outreach and public education. So it's not something that the municipality would have tasks, specific tasks to do that would probably be done at the COG level. But yeah, thanks. That's a great observation, great comment. It is multifaceted.
Any other board
Anything
members
else?
wish to have a comment on this? Anita, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Whitman. It's interesting to me how some aspects of the current market are already flowing in this way, or how some nonprofits are paying attention to this. For instance, our housing task force, the Patton Township Housing Task Force, has recently toured a Habitat for Humanity house. We had land trust folk speak to us, and I saw one of the land trust homes in College Heights. Those homes are very sensitive to including energy efficient utilities, remodeling or when they renovate to make it energy efficient, because in the long term, that saves the homeowner money. And that's an important facet in making the homes attainable for the salaries that folks are making. So it makes practical economic sense to be energy efficient. And I don't know if there's anything at a municipal level we can do to recognize that, maybe certainly not support it financially, but even to say kudos, here's a good act that is happening that benefits the homeowners in our township. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And that is certainly one of the best attacks or approaches is to implement better energy practices at the building level. It's much harder to go back and retrofit, but that is something that where the cost-benefit ratio might be a little tougher to, or might not be as overtly in the positive direction. Whereas in the new housing, the savings is maybe achieved much earlier. Things. And I actually did want to end by saying that we often see in the headlines what we think of the major climate events, oceans rising and the fires in the West, or the higher temperatures in areas where there are the cataclysmic fires. And I feel very lucky to live where we do, where we're not impacted by either of these headline-grabbing happenings. And yet, just yesterday, I read that the smoke from one of the fires has come across the East Coast to Philadelphia, right through Pennsylvania. In fact, it was New York, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, by the map that I looked at, seemed to be most directly impacted. In fact, I checked the air quality index. Yesterday, it was up to 180. Today, or 150. Today, it's down to about 80. And I checked with some folks at AccuWeather who said, that smoke from those fires is impacting at the ground level. It is a direct impact from what the headlines are connecting to climate change. So in a way, Center County is a little bit in the headlines. So I'm glad that we're not in the headlines anymore. Well, thank you for your input on this. And I'll just be reaching out to individuals and get some more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Whitman. Any other further questions or comments from anybody? Okay, if not, we'll move on then. Next item is 7C, Financial Trends Monitoring. Mr. Pegger, I think this is yours.
Yes, it is. Hello, everyone. I'm up in Ohio, so hopefully you can hear me. So the Financial Trends Monitoring System is a report we've done over the past 12 years, and it combines the budget, the financial statements, demographic and economic information to give us some key indicators so that we can monitor our financial position and be alerted a little bit earlier of any major problems that may be coming up. So in my presentation here, I think I have about a dozen of the indicators that I just wanted to quickly show so we can see where the township stands in their financial trends. Please understand that 2020 was a crazy year, so we may see some blips in some of our indicators. So the population growth still hovering between, 15,800, 16,000 people. For 2020, the estimate, they haven't come out with the actual census data yet, so we don't know what the official census amount's going to be, but the estimate is 15,828 residents. The next item is our population by age. It hasn't changed very much from when we started doing this report to now. Our actual changes, our actual breakdown by age is relatively stable. The next one is the sources of revenue. You'll see that 2020 compared to 2010, you'll see that the number for, I gotta see it because it's a little bit closer, intergovernmental has gone up, which causes the other ones to go down, and the intergovernmental deals with, the amount, the $1 million we got, mainly the $1 million, the $1.2 million we got through the federal government, through PennDOT for the multi-use path on Valley Vista Road. This is just another way to look at the revenue sources, and you can see that the yellow is increasing as the blue, which is real estate taxes, remains pretty stable. This is a comparison of our revenues and expenditures, and we continue to stay relatively even with our revenues and expenditures over the last couple of years, revenues being just a little bit higher than expenditures. These are expenditures by function. The big blue line you see in the last 2 years is our debt payments that we're making on the original $9 million loan that we took out. So that's pretty stable. Here's one that's really going to maybe surprise some people. After years and years and years of our benefits as a percentage of total wages going up, creeping up, we made some changes back with the contract in 2019. We had a little bit of a drop, which I expected to see. We had a huge drop in 2020, and that's mainly due to the fact that we are self-insured. People go to the doctors. We pay the doctor bills through an administrator directly with the doctors, with people not really going to the doctors during COVID. Our medical expenses were down, so that's why we're showing a big shortage. This hasn't changed. We haven't finished the 2021 report for the police pension, but our unfunded pension ratio is very good compared to other townships in the region. This is our ratio of our cash on hand to our current liabilities. This gives us an idea, are we able to pay our bills? As long as it's above the zero, we're able to pay our bills. It's showing over the last few years a decrease that has a lot to do with the reduction of the cash fund balance that we've been trying to do deliberately, so we've been expecting that. So this is still favorable. This shows our debt ratio per assessed values, and you'll see the big jump the year that we borrowed the money for the open space, the $3.5 million, and then over time this will continue to go down until we decide to borrow some more. The unemployment rate is starting to come down. I don't think it's quite where we would really like it to be yet. The unemployment rate for Center County continues to be the lowest, if not the lowest, in the state of Pennsylvania. That obviously that big blip in the middle was due to the shutdown or the COVID. So we're seeing some, starting to see some positive trends, but we would rather hopefully nothing happens that will cause another shutdown, which will cause another spike in the unemployment rate.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Questions or comments for Larry Pegger?
Just to say, that was great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Ellie.
Elliot, go ahead. You're muted.
You muted yourself, Elliot.
I was just saying that it looks like you continue to do everything that's fiscally possible.
That's what I try to do, yes.
Okay, thank you very much for interrupting your trip to be with us, Larry, and giving us
Sure, no problem.
this view of the financial status of our township. Okay, moving on, 7D, American Rescue Plan update. Who's taking this?
That's me.
Okay,
So this is their second item that we're going to talk about monies, and we've got a couple more. So, but as everyone knows, we are the recipients of $1.654 million from the federal government as part of the ARP plan that it's been passed to address COVID-19. I've been working with various groups, sending out emails and getting input from folks about suggested ideas of what to do with our money. I'll be reaching out again here shortly and asking folks one more time to see if we can get some more input. I do note that asking the board if you have comments and suggestions for how to use the funds. I'm going to ask you that you provide those to me by August 11th. Again, you can just email me those. That's probably the best way to do that. I will send out an email again tomorrow with a specific request on that, so you can hit reply and get it back to me. We have received input from around 40 township residents of various people doing various things, either employees, members of our ABCs, general residents, and also I did reach out to some of our partners, COG and CAD, and we've got some input on those. Used a couple of different channels to get input, set up a little survey on SurveyMonkey, asking people to provide both specific input on things that they would like to see, and then asked for some general input on categories. If you look at question 3, was the question where I asked them for specific ideas. There you see on the screen is the word cloud that came back from those. We have a wide range of comments in those, and also if you go to the next page, there's all the specific idea that everybody did put in there. I haven't read through them all yet, but will do by the time I come back to you. In terms of question 4, that was kind of the general response. Let Alex get to there. There was 8 categories that had been specified in the ARP legislation, and you can see there wasn't any one that stood out from all the others. There was general support across the board for almost for all those categories. One couple of things I wanted to touch on. Can you bring up item 73, Alex? Yeah. I'd asked Larry to look at a specific part of the ARP legislation. There's language in there that provides that we can designate a certain portion of the funding that we are to receive as replacement for revenue reductions that were assumed to be caused by COVID-19. Larry had provided that calculation, or the GFOA, which is the Governmental Finance Officers Association, had provided a calculator, and the legislation actually gave us an assumed growth rate we could plug in there. That's the 4.1% growth rate that shows up on line 4 of that calculator sheet. And then they also provided guidance on how we calculate what our revenue was as opposed to what our expected revenue. Short story is about 1.2 million of the expected 1.6 million can be classified as replacement of revenue reduction. That's just based on 2020. We may have some additional revenue reduction that will show up in 2021. We'll update you on that. Those revenue reduction funds can be deposited into our general fund, and then they do not need to follow the strict guidance that's provided in the ARP. So we can do lots more things with those revenue reduction funds other than what's included in the ARP legislation. So they could be used for some capital projects that aren't directly related to COVID, to addressing COVID issues. I wanted to make sure that the board was aware of that. And I think with that, that's my update for today. Again, I'll be working with the public and everything to get some more input. I'll bring that all together again. I'll be gathering the board's input, and I'll be back to address the board, I believe, in August. Yeah, August 18th. We'll do another presentation to the board. Hopefully, we'll have a little more specificity about what we might use those funds with, and then we'll work into September and October to refine those lists of what we want to do with that money. And ultimately, the capital items will go into our CIP plan. The non-capital items will end up in our budget, and we'll, at this point, unless there's something else we need to do, I think we're pointing towards start making expenditures in 2022 under the next budget. So that's the end of my report. You might see if there's any public input.
Let me ask a question just for clarification. Doug, thank you for informing us that the revenue reduction, that the ARP funds that we are calling to replace revenue, because the reduction can go directly in the general fund, and therefore we don't have to qualify it, make it qualify for a specific ARP allowed expenditure once that's called replacing revenue. That's important. Now, let me ask you then, what about the first payment we received, the $827,000 we got for this year? Don't we have to do something with that?
We have to, well, we need to report in October, and our report will be, we haven't done anything with it yet. So and then every year in October, we'll have to file a report and tell U.S. Treasury what we used the money for.
Basically until we use it up.
Correct.
Okay.
Did I answer your question, Dan? I mean, it's sitting, we've got it.
No, I understand.
I think-
I'm thinking of, well, how is, where is it sitting? Is it sitting in general funds or just sitting in a separate, by itself?
Well, let's ask Larry, because Can you unmute there? Yeah, where's the
So-
money sitting right now?
So it is sitting in the general fund. However, it is, our general fund gets swept every night and gets invested. So we are getting, some income, some interest income based on that amount of money, but is sitting in our general fund right now.
Yeah, so we'll have to account for every dollar that we spend and report that back to U.S. Treasury, but we only have to do annual reports, right, Larry? I think that was my reading of the last
Yes,
guidance.
because we fall under the 50,000 population. We only have to report it, you're right, Doug, it's every October, based on what we had done with the money prior to the reporting date.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm satisfied. So, questions or comments from other members of the board? Anita, go ahead.
Yes, I was delighted to see the depth of some of the resident comments to the survey. The 38 responses, how many families more or less do we have in Patton Township? Isn't it 900 and some or more than that?
We have about 6,000 dwelling units.
Okay, 6,000. I'm just wondering, and because the survey didn't really have any one item pop out, I don't know how effective the survey is at gauging public opinion, but I'm wondering if there's a way to reach more of those 6,000 people to be sure that they know that they have a chance for input. I don't know if there's an e-blast or a, when our website gets revised or, but
The last,
I
it went out.
could see, I could see some residents saying, gee, we didn't know anything about this. And I would see it more as, casting a wider net for public input. And I just raised that question.
Yeah, I think the last time we sent it out email to our big list, also put it up on the link up on Nextdoor and Facebook. And if it's not on the website now, it will be in the next couple of days. So, yeah, those are the ways. I mean, we'll get input from the people who are interested. Let me put it that way. So, but we'll reach out one more time before we close the survey.
Because I think given this summer, a lot of people might be away or distracted or not focused, but
Yeah,
good.
if the board wants to continue taking input, we can do that. We can talk about that in August then.
And maybe even include it in the fall, will there be a fall newsletter that is postal mailed to people?
Yeah, there will be, yeah, we could do that if the board wants to continue taking input.
I would suggest that, I think,
Yeah.
to give every opportunities for public engagement and ultimate public acceptance on how the decisions happen on spending the money. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Anita. Okay. Any other questions or comments? How about the public? Any members of the public wish to weigh in on this? Not seeing any hands raised. Okay, well then, you have enough information from us, Doug?
Yep, I'll be back
Okay.
next month. We'll talk about it some more.
All right, and we'll move on to 7E, the 2022-2026 CIP, Capital Improvement Plan.
Yeah, again, staff will start our real work on the CIP in August, although people have probably already, I've already sent Larry 2 or 3 different ideas as they pop up to me. I find it just best if I fill out the paperwork and send it to Larry, and then he's got it to include. But if the board has ideas, questions, comments, ask that you feed those in to me. And note that this item will also be back, your next and last chance will again be in late August at the next meeting to provide input. So that's it for that item.
Oh, okay, I personally am in need of a short break, so I will now call a recess for 5 minutes.
9 minutes.
Okay, I'm ready, so we'll call the meeting back to order. Next item on the agenda is 7F, the Council of Governments 2022 Program Plan and Capital Improvement Plan.
Yeah, again, just a brief, few brief comments I have. Those documents are out. The CIP was just recently released. If you'd like a copy of that, an early pre-copy, I can send you what the Finance Committee looked at. The program plan was provided with the agenda. Give you those documents early so you have a chance to look at them. Sorry, didn't. We get the COG General Forum should formally send those to municipalities for comments. Because of our summer schedule and the COG schedule, we get one opportunity to provide comments back for everybody. That's at our next meeting on August 18th. I will be going through those and providing some comments. I did have looked through the documents briefly. I think for the most part, I don't think I'll have as many comments as I had in the past, which I think is a good thing. But there are a couple things I think we do need to talk about before it goes back to COG.
Okay.
So I will, again, so look for that. As soon as I get the comment sheet from the matrix that COG will fill out, I'll get that filled out and get it to the board members as soon as I can before the next agenda goes out. So if you do have comments, you can get those back and we'll compile those, and then the COG Finance Committee is going to look at it immediately the next morning after we meet. So we'll need to do a fairly quick turnaround of those comments. Do you have anybody has any questions or comments about that? I'll try to address them.
Board, any questions or comments? No. No, I don't have Alex, I don't have the display view anymore. And hold on, let me switch, gallery. There we go. I got it now. Board, any questions or comments? I just encourage my colleagues on the board to take the time to go through all these details. It's quite a long document, and it's critical that COG receive our input on the 18th. In fact, just to let you know, the Finance Committee is scheduled its meeting on the 19th, the next morning, and then the Exec Committee has changed its scheduled meeting to that day at noon. So there are two COG committees who need this information. And Doug, I'm not sure how we're going to be able to provide it in a fashion that they can, it makes any sense. I mean, you can send them something.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to I'll ask the board members to give me their comments. We'll put them all together, and then it'll be a matter of just, what are the consensus comments at the end of our meeting on the 18th, and get that to Joe and Eric at COG.
Yeah. I just want to be sure you were aware of those.
Yeah.
Rescheduled.
I hadn't heard about Exec Committee, but.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on that? Next is 7G, the PSAT annual business meeting, October 15th.
Yeah, Elliot, I did talk to Elliot last week. He was designated to be our voting delegate to the spring conference that got canceled due to COVID. Elliot has said he will attend this business meeting on Friday, October 15th. Information was provided. It starts at 8 and it's done at 1:30. If anybody else wants to attend, let us know here at the office, and we'll make the arrangements, get you registered. There is a 100th anniversary PSATS dinner celebration the night before. If anybody would like to attend that too, let us know, and we'll make the arrangements for that also. Again, if you would like to attend, let me know, and we'll make those arrangements.
Yeah, I plan to go
Okay.
for both the dinner and the business
Okay.
meeting. All right, then moving on, 7H, legislative update, state law changes.
Yeah, I wanted to take an opportunity. These are probably the two most significant things that came out of the recently concluded legislative session. And I'm going to go to the bottom one first, meeting agendas. There is now, or will be effective at the end of August, a state requirement that we will have to physically post our meeting agenda and put it up on our website at least 24 hours before a meeting. The board is obligated to follow that agenda, but however, if at the beginning of the meeting somebody wants to add an item to the agenda, the board can take a vote, and a majority of the governing board can add an item to the meeting under that, in that manner.
Where do you plan to post the agenda?
Well, we have bulletin boards in the foyer upstairs.
foyer
So we'll do
upstairs,
that. But the other thing that came out of this in some FAQs and training I've been part of is that this requirement applies to all our ABCs. So we'll need to put out some education to make sure all our ABCs are complying with that. Also, all our ABCs need to move either to in-person or hybrid meetings. And so those are changes that we'll have to make sure are all instituted by the end of August.
What about agencies that have representatives from multiple municipalities, like the airport authority or whatever?
Yeah, this is a change to the Sunshine Law. So this affects all public agencies in Pennsylvania. So, yes.
I guess my question is, who's responsible then for, it would not be us if we just like have one member?
No, it would be
the
the authority itself would be responsible for posting theirs. We do not need to do that for those agencies, but we do need to, our RAC and our Open Space Stewardship Committee, and there are a couple others that meeting frequently, but we'll have to make sure that whenever we do a meeting that we comply with that and post those agendas up front. The other item I just wanted to touch on is the 5G regulations, and just to note that this was a negotiated item between the cell phone providers and the state, and both PSATs and PML were all involved in these negotiations. And those that were involved with it and that were working closely with PML say, given the environment that the Federal Communications Commission left us in when they did their final rulemaking last year, this is the best outcome we could have hoped for 5G deployment. What we're expecting for most of the 5G deployment is what we call either small cells or a distributed antenna system. You may recall that we have some of these already in Patton Township along Colonnade Boulevard and in the Oakwood neighborhood. Some of them are on top of street light standards, some are on top of traffic signal poles and things like that. But 5G antennas for 5G need to be much closer together than they are for the traditional cell, the very large towers. So these things will probably be like 1,000 feet apart. As I said, the FCC left us in a less than desirable place. They had put maximum fees that we can charge. That's where the $270 for the not-to-exceed fee for small wireless facilities or new utility poles. FCC actually put that into place. There are time limits, that's the 60 and 90 days that we have to respond. Those are in place, but these regulations do provide us with the opportunities to impose guidelines that say, if you look down towards about the third line from the bottom, guidelines to minimize aesthetic impact. So that's what we've been doing with these things up till now. We've been negotiating, on a case-by-case basis, to get things that didn't look ugly or too ugly, let me put it that way. So we'll still have that ability, but we are reined in much more than we were before, both on terms of cost and deployment. So my expectation is, I know Verizon had been looking at doing some things, Verizon Wireless, last year, especially in tough trees, and then I hadn't heard anything from them. But with this now in place, that becomes effective again at the end of August, I would expect that we're going to see more deployment of these small wireless facilities throughout the township. And we'll update you as needed. And if there are any questions, I'll try to address them.
Any questions?
I actually have
Go ahead,
a
Betsy.
question on the meeting agenda item. I would challenge, I'm looking at Larry, our new communications person, to figure out a way to post the agenda on the website so that all of the attachments are very easily accessible. Most people don't get the attachments when they download the agenda. I have figured out how to do it, but it took me it was a big learning curve for me a couple of years ago. And now I even have a new computer that does not allow me to automatically download the attachment. So I have to use my old computer to get it. I have to get my,
Okay.
whatever. So just make sure, if you can, that there's a special file or set of files for all of the attachments.
Okay, yeah,
Thanks.
we
Thanks so much.
certainly could do that. I'll bring it up to her.
Yeah.
I'll piggyback on that and say, that I think COG has that figured out. They use SharePoint, and for me, it works.
But the public doesn't always use SharePoint.
Yeah, I
That's,
think
they do?
it should be.
Okay.
I think if you go into their website, you end up at the same folder.
Yeah, SharePoint is,
Then we could do, that's true. Then we could use that.
COG has the SharePoint
That's true.
program. We don't need that. We just need a browser.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, if we can't do it with the website, we may have to
Yeah, okay.
do something.
And State
Yeah,
College actually produces everything in one file.
yeah, I'll talk to Sophie and see if we can do that.
Thanks,
And,
Larry.
Doug, just a quick question on all the ABCs. The ABC itself doesn't have to have a specific website to post it on, right? We're supposed to post them all on the township website.
Yeah, no, we don't. We'll have to figure out some way. I mean, we had the board page of agendas and the PC page of agendas. We'll probably want to, if we can get back to something like that.
Yeah.
That's what I'd prefer.
I've already talked to Sophie about doing that and putting a history of all the agendas out there, the database. But currently, we're only putting like the RAC, the Planning Commission, the Planning Commission work session, and the board. Those are the 4 agendas I've been adding to the website. So,
We'll need to expand that, but we got
yeah,
time.
that's
Yep.
what we'll have to do. Yep, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doug and Larry. Next item is the consent agenda. So does a board member wish to pull any item off of the consent agenda and discuss it separately? Seeing no one taking advantage of that option, so I will solicit a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Betsy, second. Anita T, second. Any discussion? Okay, let's vote. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Everyone voted aye, so the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Manager's report.
Under correspondence, had several items. There was a request from a resident that we not use BT spray to address gypsy moth caterpillars next year. There was discussion, I think, last meeting or the meeting before about volunteer projects. And I had asked Susan Wheeler to give us a list, and that was included there. There was an announcement recently that we've been awarded monies for the Green Light Go monies for a project to connect 28 traffic signals along Atherton Street. I think I've talked to the board about that, but that money's been allocated, and there was a resolution to that effect included in the agenda, or the consent agenda. Included an annual recycling report that's includes the leaves and brush we collect from everybody, so over 525 tons of materials were kept out of the landfills and been recycled by the township. Also, development update from the zoning officer was included. If there's any comment, any questions, I'll answer those. Under announcements, item B, mosquito spraying is available through the Center County Mosquito Disease Control Program. If you go to their website and search for that, you should come up with a contact. They have been doing some spraying out in the Grays Woods neighborhood, out towards the end of Grays Woods Boulevard. What they do is they will go out and trap mosquitoes and see how bad the infestation is. They have some metrics that they use, and if they trap enough and catch enough in their traps to exceed the threshold that they need, they do have spraying equipment. They can go out there and do that. I think they've done a couple sprayings out there. So if people in other neighborhoods are having problems, or if the board members or staff hear concerns from residents, point them towards me or to Center County Mosquito Disease Control Program. That program actually sits in the Office of Planning and Community Development, if you're looking for it on their website. PML has finally announced that they will have a leadership summit. It will be October 7 to 9. If anybody wants to go, we should probably make reservations at the Marriott in Lancaster. So I'll reach out to board members if anybody wants to, and see who might want to attend that. There's no agenda yet, and I don't even remember what dates 7 to 9 are, but lately they've been going from like Thursday to Saturday as part of their program.
Doug, can I ask real quick a question? Is this their annual conference, or is this?
Yes, no,
Oh,
this
okay.
is their annual
They
conference.
just call it the leadership. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is Thursday through Saturday.
Okay. Yeah, and last I checked, there wasn't an agenda yet, but
Okay.
we can make hotel reservations, which are limited. So I would suggest if you're thinking about doing it, let us know and we'll get those reservations made. The next item, can you put up 9C? I just want to touch on this. I don't want to spend a lot of time today, but if you look at Center County, these lists, these are the factors that the assessor's office, the assessor's offices across Pennsylvania use to, when a new property hits the tax rolls, they use these common level ratio factors to convert from market value to assessed value. So say in Center County, a new commercial property was built, like say a hospital over by Cracker Barrel or something, and they had a $60 million market value, the assessor divides that in Center County by 4.29 to get the assessed value, and then the assessed value is what our millage rate is applied on. If you look through that whole list, you'll see that they range, I think from the lowest one is Delaware, which must have done a reassessment just very recently, which means that their market values are the same as their assessed values, and the highest one, Butler County, 12.66. If you want to look through that list, you know, you'll see that we are on the high side. I mean, there are many that are higher than us, but there's probably a lot more that are lower than us. The last time Center County reassessed, and it's a county function to do reassessments, was back in the mid-90s. I can't remember if it was 94 or 95. But when you start getting common level ratios at the area where we're seeing them in Center County, it's probably time to start talking to our county commissioners about looking at a reassessment. The last time there was any real movement was back 2007 and 8, and then we had the recession, and that kind of killed that issue. But I think coming out of the pandemic, might be time to talk to our commissioners again, that they really need to look at doing a reassessment and getting us back in so that assessments are really a much closer reflection of what market values are. Places like Butler County probably haven't done a reassessment for 40 years or something like that. So there's a need to do that, and especially for us, because these common level ratios are also set on a countywide basis. So when you look at Center County as a whole and then look at the center region, with our property values being much higher than they are in the rest of the county, we really are at another disadvantage when they take that common level ratio and apply it to everything. So I will probably be talking about reassessment again, but I just wanted to, this hit my desk last week or a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to start that conversation with the board. Any questions?
Yeah, so if I could just probably state the obvious, that it behooves our treasury to reevaluate
Well,
this and
yeah,
have that go low.
Yeah, where a reassessment is, by state law, reassessments have to be revenue neutral for the municipalities of the taxing jurisdictions.
Okay.
So what will happen, now reassessments are kind of expensive, but again, it's the county that's supposed to do it. And they're supposed to be revenue neutral. So our current millage rate is 9.85, is that correct, Larry? Something like, yeah.
It's 9.5.
Yeah, 9.5. So when the county goes through and does a reassessment, our millage rate will be reduced to reflect that.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
9.5 mils on the old assessed value has to equal whatever the new tax rate is on the new assessed
Okay.
value. So nobody gets dinged particularly. Some people, there will be some complaints from some people, but there is an appeal process that people can undertake. But it's something that should be done probably a little more often than at least every 25 years.
Yeah.
So, again, you'll probably hear more on that as we move forward.
I have a clarification that I need.
Yep.
Now, you're talking about reassessments, and then you're also talking about common level ratio. Who sets common level, how is common level ratio related to reassessment?
The state sets this common level, the state sets this CLR factor every year. They look at sales data, and what this common level ratio is trying to do is take market values and equate them to market/assessed values from 1994. So, say, does that make sense to you? So we're trying to tax everybody on what their property was valued in 1994 when the last assessment was done. What happens, especially with big box retailers, and their values could double, say in the last 20 years, the value of their building. But they go in and ask for an appeal, their market value doubles up to whatever it was, and then gets reduced by a factor of 4 point something back to a new assessed value, which may be less than the old assessed value. So especially for large properties, it's hard on taxing authorities from that point of view.
Because of all the
And we see every time we see a recession or land values start to go flat around here, the rise in valuations start to go flat, we see lots of appeals from large properties. I will say every big box store in Patton Township has gone through at least one appeal in the last 15 years, and some are on their second or third one.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from
Thanks.
the board or the public? All right, go ahead and continue with your report.
Sure, just a couple other things to final up. There was the second quarter single-family housing starts chart. We're still above 40 units per year, which is higher than we've been since in at least 10 years, but it's been, well, let's call it flat for the last 4 quarters. We've just been hovering between 40 and 41, so we're not really seeing any growth. Some of that may be with COVID. Now it seems the market's pretty hot right now. Prices are up, so we'll see. But that's core. I'll keep bringing those quarterly reports forward. The last item, there was a request regarding a street light that's required on a subdivision at Meeks Lane. We told the requester we'd include their comments to the board, but also told them that their HOA would have to make the request and some other hoops that they would have to jump through, and also advised them that the board was looking at approving an ordinance on requiring streetlights. So we'll give you an update if we hear any more from them. That's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Next item is committee reports. You have the written committee reports in the attachments. Does any board member wish to expand on what they've already submitted? Pam, Rob, yes, go ahead.
I just wanted noted in our agenda that the joint committee of the environmental, public safety, transportation, and land use was canceled, so you have no report from that.
Okay, any other board member wish to expand on your report? Anita, go ahead.
Just briefly, I would like the record to show that our township manager, Doug Erickson, has put the Housing Task Force in touch with CNET, and this was a very important connection, and thank you, Doug, for doing that. The task force is providing material to CNET for 3 public service spots regarding affordable housing that will come about hopefully in the fall, perhaps in October, but Doug made that connection and set things up, and that's a very creative approach for us in the Housing Task Force to engage the public more in beginning to think about the community-wide dialogue that we hope will be happening on the proposals that the task force will be bringing. So thank you, Doug. That was very important, and we appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.
I would just
Yes,
like to note that my presentation on the agenda was in place of the report for the Climate Action Sustainability. You probably figured that out.
Okay. I do have something. The COG Exec Committee met yesterday, so I did not write up anything. Besides the more routine items on the agenda, there were a couple of things I do want to mention. Well, the main thing, there's really one thing I want to mention. Supervisor Rich Frank from College Township added at the very end of the meeting a written statement, and this has to do with the Parks and Rec. You know, there are 3 groups, and Anita, you were there at that meeting, I presume. As you know,
Yes.
there's the Parks Capital Committee of COG. There's the Parks and Recreation Authority. And then there is the Parks and Rec Agency of COG. And so Anita has experienced it in attending the meetings. There's even though there's a common goal of everybody to do the best we can for our citizens, the process is kind of convoluted because of differences in responsibility and, you know, different viewpoints from especially the frustration by some municipal elected leaders at not having a direct influence over the Parks and Rec Authority decision-making. Even though we send a representative to the authority, the authority is independent of the, and so Rich Frank is proposing the creation of a task force to determine the best mission and/or purpose for the authority for the future, the best governance structure to achieve that mission or purpose, the best governing documents to achieve that mission and purpose, you know, like bylaws, memoranda of understanding, et cetera, and in any additional supporting tasks assigned by the exec committee. So he just presented this without us knowing about it in advance. So I'm just alerting all of you that this is something that will be in discussion by your, you know, the relevant committees, the Parks Capital, obviously, Anita, and the Finance Committee, Exec Committee. I mean, it's going to impact a number of different groups. So I didn't want you to be surprised. And Doug, you haven't heard about this either yet, so I didn't want you to be surprised when this pops up as an agenda item. Any other comments or questions about committee reports? Anita, go ahead.
Just very briefly, yes, the last joint meeting of the Parks Capital and the Authority happened in July, and the sense was that indeed the structure is creating problems, but that it's going to be complicated to begin to revise or rethink about the whole structure. It sounds like there's a proposal on the table to begin that process, but there was, I think, agreement among the authority as well as Parks Capital as well as the Parks Agency that this would be require a great deal of energy and investment. And the Pam Salagangas from the Center Region Parks and Recreation explained in terms of staff time that might be needed to offer statistics and stuff. Right now, their staff is stretched really thin. And so, yes, and my sense was that the leader of the Parks Authority said, what does COG want the authority to be? So, they're putting it on the table there too. So yes, this is going to be a long and interesting process. It sounds like it's starting right now. So thank you.
Sure. Any other business? Any board member wish to raise an item that's not on the agenda? Other business? Yeah, Pam, go ahead.
I just would like to say, on July 13th, when they had the single-family fire, Fire Director Steve Baer was the first to arrive with the Alpha Company and, Alpha Company and Matilda Company, Fire Company, LifeLink EMS, and our Patton Township police officers were all in attendance to put out the fire, help each other. And I think because it was a joint collaboration with all these entities that we in Patton Township have to say thank you, especially to our Patton Township police officers. And if our Patton Fire Department was a part, I'm sorry. It wasn't written, but I must admit, thank them all for the great job that they did.
Yeah, we're very proud of our agencies, both Patton Township agencies and Center Region agencies, and their professionalism and their rapid responses.
Ballsburg covered for, and Ballsburg Fire Department covered for Alpha. So we thank them as well.
Yeah. Elliot, you had your hand raised?
Yes, just a clarification. There is no separate Patton Fire Department. It's part of the Alpha.
Thank you, Elliot. So we thank Alpha Fire Company.
Okay.
Truly, thank you.
Any other business? If not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Say aye.
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 Meeting adjourned. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.